Is it a little pretentious to think of yourself as a deep thinker? Yeah. But as you know, it's no badge of honor. Metacognition, thinking about thinking, usually comes at the cost of confidence, decisiveness, and inner peace. You're occupied with considering all the viewpoints, doubting the authenticity of your motivations, and making sure your actions are logically coherent. Meanwhile, many around you have their lives in order, in more order than you do. They're able to have the answers to everything and can contextualize themselves in relation to the world around them, all because they accept a worldview wholeheartedly. And yet, you, with your ability to see their logical contradictions, the things that they aren't taking into account, and even the genealogy of their morals, can barely hold a candle to them. And you're too aware to cope with smug superiority at your unrecognized intelligence. And so you adopt worldviews half-heartedly, knowing that they're only provisional. And so you get the worst of both worlds, betraying your intellectual integrity by allowing yourself to be governed by frameworks you can see right through, but not to the degree where you can succeed by their metrics. And when you're not busy grinding away at meaningless activities, you use your free time to lobotomize yourself with stimulation. Anything to avoid that vague, uneasy feeling that happens when your mind is unoccupied. And you also know that you're only getting older, and every day spent in this manner only cements you further. Eventually, this is all your life will amount to unless something changes. This video is a practical demonstration of how to use Nagarjuna's logic to free yourself from the trap of reification, which is the issue that makes metacognition a curse. Reification is the process of taking concepts to be independently existing entities. Why does this make metacognition a curse? Because each worldview you entertain gives different meanings to concepts, such as success, maturity, wasting time, and so on. You can't commit to a single framework, and so the meanings of these concepts keep shifting. One moment success means one thing, and another moment it means something completely incompatible with the previous worldview you were using. But you still reify these concepts regardless of their shifting nature. You treat them as if they're stable, real things. So you're constantly caught in contradiction. Nothing feels right because you're trying to navigate the world using concepts that won't stay still. And so, all the answers you come up with for the questions about your life are proven wrong by your own reasoning. The solution isn't to finally pick the right answer and to commit to it. We've already established that you can't do that. Making a unique worldview that somehow takes the best of everything and combines them into one cohesive view also runs into the same problems, but with more headaches. And emptying your mind of all concepts and going Zen mode is very difficult coming from a place of existential dread. So what is the solution? Refuting the reification of commonly held concepts shared between worldviews. But how? You can't just decide to stop reifying things. Telling yourself that concepts aren't real isn't going to change anything when you still take them to be deep down. You need logical insight to drive that knowledge deep into your being. This is where Nagarjuna's logic comes in. It forces reification to collapse under the weight of its own internal contradictions. The method is called Prasaṅga, or consequentialist reasoning, or more commonly, reductio ad absurdum. It works by showing that treating concepts as independently existing entities leads to logical impossibilities. Why is it your solution specifically? Because it doesn't require adopting a new worldview. You can still continue to think logically across various frameworks because that wasn't the problem to begin with. The problem was reification, turning your intellectual flexibility into paralysis. Nagarjuna's method removes the reification while still keeping your analytical capabilities intact. You dissolve the trap without dulling the mind that saw it in the first place. But here's the thing, you need to put in the intellectual labor in rigorously applying the logic. And you likely need to do so for a good number of concepts before the process comes to you naturally. But once you see a concept collapse under logical examination, you can't unsee it. The reification loses its grip, and when the attachment dissolves, so does the suffering it caused. Today, we'll be applying Nagarjuna's logic to something we brought up earlier. You're getting older. In other words, we are dissolving the reification of aging and the one who undergoes the process of aging, aka ager. Why use aging as an example? Because it seems objective and undeniable, unlike something subjective like success. And because we all feel the anxiety of time running out and vitality decreasing. If Prasaṅga can dissolve something this fundamental, you can see how it applies to everything else. Let's start with a simple question. When does aging exist? If it exists as an independent thing, as we've been treating it, it must exist somewhere in time. So let's check each possibility. The first method we'll employ is the san世門破to show that aging cannot exist in the past, present, or future, and therefore cannot be said to exist at all. san世門破. Here are the three negations once again. 1. There is no aging where one has aged, meaning there is no aging in the past. 2. There is no aging where one has not aged. In other words, there is no aging in the future. And 3. There is no aging in the present. We'll look at these one at a time and address the objections. Number 1. There is no aging where one has aged, or there is no aging in the past. Now you might object. If aging did not occur in the past, there would be no old people now. And here is our response to that objection. When one is 80, the aging before that no longer exists. In other words, the aging from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and all the way to 79 to 80 does not exist. I'm sure you agree that we are not like Matryoshka dolls that contain all the active transitions we've ever been through. If you're scratching your head at this, remember that we are not dealing with observable phenomena. We are dealing with the reified concept of aging. Let's move on to number 2. There is no aging where one has not aged. Or in other words, aging is not in the future. And then again, you might object that if aging is not in the future, then we'd all be the same age as we are now, forever. But here's the thing. If aging is in the future, that means that someone who is 80 is also aging from 90 to 91, 91 to 92, and so on. Inverse Matryoshka dolls. Okay, you might say, aging isn't in the future now, but it will be. And to that, we say will be means it's currently not in the future. It's not there yet. If aging existed in the future right now, the 80-year-old would simultaneously be aging from 90 to 91, which would be absurd. Number 3, there is no aging in the present. Now this is easy to counter. You can say, Aging is an ongoing and ever-present process. People age as time goes on. And to that we say, if there is no aging in the past or future, as we have already established, how can you say one is aging? The 79-year-old does not exist when there is the 80-year-old, nor does the 81-year-old exist when there is the 80-year-old. You can shrink down the time scale to the smallest degree and see that at no point is aging present. At any given instant, you're a particular age, not aging. Aging would require before and after, but those are past and future, which we have already negated. And so this ends the sanse monha, or the refutation of the 3 times. But we are not done yet. Nagarjuna has more logical maneuvers to thoroughly eradicate the reification of concepts. Next, we move on to the ichi monha, the refutation of sameness and difference, which has 2 parts, the doitsuha, the refutation of sameness, and the betsuiha, the refutation of difference. We'll continue from the objection to where we left off. Objection. A person is aging. It has nothing to do with when. A person, by virtue of being a person, is aging. Doitsuha, for simplicity, we'll call a person who undergoes the process of aging an ager. And so, if aging is the same as ager, then there is no action or agent to perform the action, or in this case, a process and a subject that undergoes the process. Effectively, when you say that a person, by virtue of being a person, is aging, you are saying aging is aging, which is meaningless, which renders your claim that a person is aging as untenable. And to that you might object that when you said a person is aging, you did not mean it in the literal sense of a person equals aging. Aging and ager are not one and the same, you might say. And this is where the betsuiha comes in. If they are separate, then there is aging independent of agers and vice versa. But that would also be untenable, because how can the process of aging exist without anyone to undergo it? And how can agers exist without the process of aging? The definitions of the terms do not hold if they were different things. And so we conclude the ichi monha. If both the agent and the action are not established as the same phenomena or different phenomena, how could these two be established by something other than those two? We've shown that ager and aging can neither be the same thing nor different things. Both options lead to impossibilities. And so the reification collapses. There's no independently existing aging or ager to be found. The claim aging exists and agers undergo it collapses upon itself. Aging is a process of change. So then, how can we say that one ages? That assumes one remains constant, but that is impossible if they are aging, aka changing. Therefore, there cannot be aging, nor can there be agers. And you might object, the ager is constant, but aging is tacked onto them, so to speak. And in response to that, we'll say, to say aging is tacked on implies that it is separate from the ager, and we have already shown that to be untenable in the previous argument, the betsuiha portion of the ichi monha. And so we conclude our demonstration. We have shown that aging cannot exist in any point in time, that it can neither be the same as nor different from the ager, and that the entire premise is internally incoherent. Aging cannot be an independently existing thing without leading to absurdities. And just like that, we've systematically de-reified a concept we've been holding as real for years, our entire lives perhaps. Now you might be thinking, well, okay, but aging still exists. Cells deteriorate. DNA damage accumulates. There's this thing called glycation where your body is like cooking from the moment it's born, and you're like cooked in a literal sense. Aging is an empirical reality with real consequences. What was the point of de-reifying the concept of aging? The Buddha's teaching of the two arrows explains why this matters. The first arrow is the unavoidable reality: aging, injury, death, and so on. The second arrow is the attachment to the first arrow and the narratives you build around it. The first arrow might merely be pain. The second arrow is suffering. You can't avoid the first arrow, but the second arrow, that is constructed by reification. Aging is the first arrow. Your cells deteriorate and society has more expectations of you, or different expectations of you based on your age. But the existential dread around that, the inauthentic behaviors you do to compensate for your age, that is a product of reification, and that is what we have dissolved through Prasaṅga. Remember where we started: paralyzed by contradictory frameworks, adopting worldviews half-heartedly, grinding through meaningless activities to avoid that vague feeling of unease. That paralysis came from reifying concepts that kept switching frameworks. Success, progress, maturity, wasting time, all of them seemed stable, all the while contradicting each other between frameworks. But now you have the method to dissolve that. Not by picking the right framework, not by stopping thinking, but by systematically proving to yourself that the reifications don't hold up. Here's what you do next. Pick one concept that's currently paralyzing you, and try applying one or two or all three of the methods mentioned in this video. The sanse monha, negation of the three times. The ichi monha, the negation of sameness and difference. And the negation of internal coherence. Work through it rigorously and comment your reasoning down below if you want feedback. Then do it again with another concept, and another, until the reasoning becomes natural to you. The more you do this, the faster you can execute the reasoning, so you can negate reifications the moment they come up. I highly suggest getting a copy of Nagarjuna's Middle Way with commentary. And don't just read it. Follow along with the logic and try to replicate it. It's tough intellectual work, but the payoff is that your metacognition is no longer a curse and is instead the very tool that sets you free. Thanks for watching.